Hi folks, and thanks for joining me. Yes, as soon as I see the bulbs popping out of the ground, I know it's nearly time to pop the bike out of the shed. The riding season is upon us. Sounds a bit like a nature programme, doesn't it? The rutting season or something. You know what I mean. I'm reliably informed that spring is around the corner. It doesn't feel much like it today because it's actually 0 degrees, and don't be fooled by the sunshine here in Ireland. That's a very, very rare occurrence at this time of year, and it is still freezing. Anyway, before we do hit the tarmac with 2 wheels and start tearing it up, it'll be worthwhile casting your eye over your bike and paying heed to these 5 checks. It'll make for a much smoother riding experience. It'll instill you with confidence because of the peace of mind knowing that you've done these checks, and ultimately it could save your life, so it's a no-brainer really. Right, let's crack on. Okay, number 1, and probably the most important thing on a motorbike, are the tyres. Because if your tyres are in bad shape, then you'll probably end up in bad shape as well. So the most important thing I'd say to anybody is when you're storing your bike over the winter months, if you haven't got a centre stand like this bike, then invest in a pair of paddock stands. These are only like 50 quid or something like that. Firstly, what that does, it takes the pressure off the suspension settings and keeps them full of spring for the season ahead, and it also stops any hot spots on the tyres as well. Now, the other thing is that you don't have to be moving your bike forward and back to check your tyres. You can just turn your tyre around like that, front one and back one, and what we're doing here is looking for any imperfections, any stones, any tears, any cuts, and any nails or anything like that. It all looks clear on that side. I'll do the same on the other side. So visually, first off, the back tyre looks perfect. Now, whatever you do, don't go squeezing it and thinking, yeah, the tyre pressure feels good as well, because these are reinforced as motorcycle tyres, and unless you're He-Man or something like that, you will not be able to press the tyre in to get any sort of reading on the tyre pressure. So just invest in one of these. It's only a tenner from Amazon or something like that. You can take it with you in your jacket pocket. What I do on longer trips, I take an inflator with me, certainly if I'm over on the west coast of Ireland, where petrol stations might be few and far between. So you can't always rely, if you notice that your tyres are going down, you can't always rely on getting to a petrol station to inflate them. So I do take the inflator with me. But when I'm tootling around the doors on this bike here, it's handy before I go out on every little spin. So just check the tyre pressures with this little gauge, and it'll give you a good indication as to where your tyres are and if they need inflated. I can't do it properly because I'm operating the camera with my other hand. So essentially I'm one-handed. And then do the same on the front tyre. I haven't brought the paddock stand out here for the front tyre because, to be honest, I don't like putting the paddock stand on stones. I'm only doing this for the purpose of the video, but you know what I'm talking about now. Just have a good look around the front tyre as well, exactly the same, and use the little gauge to check the inflation on that. I'll be sure to check both of my tyres properly when I'm finished this video. It's just I can't do it one-handed. Okay, next, fuel and the lubricants. Ideally, you should have stored your bike over the winter months with a full tank of fuel, but before you filled it up, you should have put in a fuel stabiliser. If you haven't done, then put in the fuel stabiliser now before you go. I use this one. This is Wynns. I only use this because it's widely available from places like Halfords and any sort of motor store. But any fuel stabiliser is better than not using a fuel stabiliser. What its main job is to stop the breakup of fuel caused by the ethanol, which is in all unleaded petrol. I think about 10% of unleaded petrol is ethanol. Ethanol attracts water. The water then breaks up your fuel mixture, and then you're left with that horrible gooey gunk on the inside of your tank and also in the fuel lines and your carburetor. So if you put in a fuel stabiliser, that helps to eliminate the breakup of it first of all, but it also, at this time of year, gets rid of a lot of that as well, flushes it out, so to speak. And it'll keep the motor running, as they say. Once you've checked your fuel over, check your lubricants as well. Your brake fluids, front and back. And there's the rear brake fluid. That all looks fine there, no need to top that one up. And then onto your main oil level. I like to run the bike, to be honest, for 2 minutes before I check the oil level, only because of the viscosity of the oil. That looks very low actually, but then again, I'm not on a totally flat surface, so I will double check. I'm going to do a proper check over. I'm only doing all of this just for the purpose of this video, so I'll be doing a proper check over after I've done this video. God, it's getting really cold. I won't be hanging around. So next up is the chain. Two things to mention with the chain. Check the tension first of all. Ideally, the play on your chain should be between 20 and 30 millimeters, and just use a ruler like this to double check that. And of course, you can use your chain tension and nuts there just to keep it within that range. Once you've checked the tension of the chain, then clean the chain. This is the stuff I use. This is the Muc-Off range, which I swear by, it's really good. But even though you might have cleaned your chain before you put the bike into storage, clean it again, because even the cleanest of garages have a lot of dust and dirt floating around in the air, and that does get into the chain. And also the lubricant can lose its lubrication properties if it's been sat up for too long, especially without the chain being turned around like this. So for the sake of a few more minutes, yeah, just clean the chain again. If you want me to do a separate chain cleaning video, of course I will. Just leave it in the comments below. But here's a few shots in the meantime of me last year just cleaning the chain. Top tip here is, of course, using a bag like this. Well, that's what I use, a plastic bag or something. It just keeps the lubricant off your brake discs and your tyres, because I don't have to remind you what the consequences could be there. Okay. Next thing to check is your brakes. I can't believe how many times I've heard stories of people starting the bike up, delighted with life because the bike works and off they go. And they've forgotten to check if the bike stops until they're doing 100 miles an hour. So brakes do seize up, especially if the bike has been stored for a few months. So on a hard surface ideally, not on gravel like I'm on here, just check the bike by rolling it forwards and backwards. Flick on your front brakes and flick on your back brakes. And a good little tip here is to listen for any grit or dirt which might have got trapped in between the brake pads and the discs. And as another precautionary measure, what I actually do is to ride the bike forwards 10 yards or so and then slam the front brake on, just to make sure everything works there, and then do the same for the rear brake. It really is mind over matter, a lot of this stuff, but it really will, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, it'll instill confidence for that first ride out. Okay, we're nearly there. Next thing on the list is your lights and your electrics. Just give everything a good once over. There'd be nothing worse going out for your first spin in months and getting pulled over by the cops because your brake light doesn't work. So just give them a once over. Everything working there, all good. Of course, check your brake light as well. And the last thing I'd recommend, folks, is to give your bike a wash and a polish. And apart from making it lovely and shiny for the season ahead, it also gives you a good opportunity for one last visual inspection, and just to make sure that there's nothing untoward. So there you go, folks. I hope you all have a superb riding season ahead, albeit a safer one if you've done those checks. If you haven't liked and subscribed to my channel already, please do so, because that all helps me bring you future videos, and I've got some incredible adventures lined up to bring you very, very soon. Now, the last thing I'd like to say just before I sign off is, for those of you who've done the checks and you get on the motorbike, you're ready to go, you start up and then realise you've got a flat battery, just make sure you invest in a trickle charger before next winter. All right, thanks again for watching, folks. I'm Dave Perry, Wheelie Good TV, over and out.